As many of you know, we are in a year-long sermon series we've just started based on Brian McLaren's book, We Make the Road by Walking. Each week he has 3 scriptures, and sometimes we will do more than one, and sometimes just one. But this morning, Deborah is in the stream of this series as well and has chosen Psalm 145 and some verses from the first chapter of the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him is life. And the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it.
Every day I will bless you, my God, and praise your name forever and ever. Your greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall laud your works to another, and shall declare your mighty acts. They shall celebrate the fame of your abundant goodness, and shall sing aloud of your righteousness.
The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. The Lord is good to all, and his compassion is over all that he has made. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. From his fullness, we have all received grace upon grace. The law indeed was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ.
All your works shall give thanks to you, O Lord, and all your faithful shall bless you. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures throughout all generations. The Lord upholds all who are falling, and raises up all who are bowed down. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due season. You open your hand, satisfying the desire of every living thing.
The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. The Lord is good to all, and his compassion is over all that he has made.
And so today, we're talking about patterns. Going to start with patterns you might be familiar with. How many of you play number games or word games such as Sudoku or crosswords or solitaire or poker? Any? All of these games rely on patterns. And the one thing that is common to them all is that the more we can recognize the pattern, the easier they are to play. The more squares we fill in, the easier it becomes to fill in the rest. Like Wheel of Fortune, filling in the letters, the words start to leap out at us even if we don't have all the letters, because we recognize the patterns of the letters into words. But if you leave pieces out, crosswords without all the words, or Sudoku without all the squares, or a solitaire without a full deck of cards, we enter randomness. It doesn't work. The pattern is interrupted and no longer makes sense. Chapter 3 of Brian McLaren's book, We Make the Road by Walking, begins with the patterns and abstractions that I talked about with the children. As a species, we're pretty good at seeing patterns and numbers in the meter of poetry, in music, in art. But how about in our own lives? Do we see the patterns that repeat themselves over and over and over again? That's tougher. We can often see those patterns in other people's lives, but when we turn our eyes onto ourselves, it becomes much more difficult. Years of therapy for some, to begin to see that there are patterns that we consciously, or more often perhaps unconsciously, repeat. And if we have trouble to see the patterns in our own lives, what hope do we have of seeing the patterns that might exist out in the world? What we take as the randomness of the universe or of our world might just have far more pattern than we can imagine. McLaren writes, above and behind and beyond the sometimes confusing randomness of life, something is going on here. From a single molecule to a strand of DNA, from a bird in flight to an ocean current to a dancing galaxy, there's a logic, a meaning, an unfolding pattern to it all. Like wood, reality has a grain. Like a river, it has a current. Like a story, it has characters and setting and conflict and resolution. And words are taken up into sentences, and they're all taken up in a magnificent pattern of beauty and meaning that we can glimpse and savor, even if it's too big and deep to fully comprehend. Creation reveals wisdom through its patterns. It reveals wisdom about its source and purpose, and about our quest to be alive, if we're paying attention. This special pattern of meaning that's all around us is referred to in the Gospel of John as logos, translated into English as word. And this logos, or word, was made flesh, according to John, in Jesus. So McLaren infers, if we want to know what God is like and what the universe is about, we should pay attention to the logic, meaning, wisdom, and patterns found in the life of Jesus. Jesus communicated the logos logic of God through his teachings and the logos pattern of God in his life. He showed us the logo essence of God in the way he treated others. From birth to death and beyond, John believes Jesus translates the logic or meaning or pattern or heart of God into terms we humans understand. Those beautiful opening chapters in the book of Genesis inspires us to look for patterns, meaning, wisdom, and logic woven into the galaxies and the planets, forests and fields, plants and animals, and even in you and me. God's logo surely is there for us to see and understand. John's gospel inspires us to look to Jesus, a poor man traveling with a band of students, telling stories, confronting injustice, helping people in need, standing for the marginalized. This pattern, this logos found in Jesus' life is the path that leads us directly to the heart of God, a heart-to-heart pattern that as we live it truly from our own hearts, becomes clearer and clearer. Each step we take along the path makes the next step a bit easier, just like in those games we play. Even as the depth of commitment to the path becomes, perhaps, more complex, asks more of us. We discover depths to ourselves that have lain dormant, but which found offer to us a deeper meaning and purpose, shows us how we fit into the logos of God's vast creation. There are, of course, other paths that we could easily find ourselves walking, often not by any immediately identifiable choice. McLaren illustrates 3 that you might recognize in our society today. He says, some of us live by the logic of rivalry. Under this logic, the cosmos is a huge battlefield in which participants can survive only by competing, defeating, deceiving, displacing, or killing their rivals. In this universe, the strongest survive, the ruthless are rewarded, the kind are killed, and the meek are crushed. You fight, or you'll be trampled. Others live by the logic of compliance. Under this logic, the cosmos is a big corporation ruled by powerful bosses, and your job is to learn the rules and comply. Stay in your allotted space, do what you're told, curry favor with the inner circle, and thus, the magic of compliance will work in your favor. You play it safe, or you'll get in trouble. And still others think of the universe as a giant machine and live by the logic of mechanism. Action, reaction, cause, effect, stimulus, and response. You can use the mechanisms of the universe to seek whatever pleasure, power, and security you can during your short life, and you better, in the end, grab what you can, because there's really no meaning to the machine, and it's all that there's ever going to be, and then it's done. There is an almost constant pull, a devious logic to these patterns that is so skillfully woven into the fabric of our culture that it's difficult to know when we've been seduced off the path of the logos of creation. But the logos of creation dares us to believe that the universe runs by the logic of creativity, goodness, and love. It is constantly evolving, offering through the language of beauty and awe, new opportunity, intellectual challenge, and deep meaning, just as we see embodied in the life of Jesus. In this story, McLaren says, pregnancy abounds, newness multiplies, freedom grows, meaning expands, wisdom flows, healing happens, and goodness runs wild. Right here, right now, we are alive. Are we paying attention? Do we discern the patterns in life? Do we interpret those patterns and open ourselves to the possibilities of a creative logos of love and wisdom that runs through the universe? If we can open ourselves to a logos, a God that is still creating, full of love and wisdom everywhere, from being embedded in our very DNA. Stretching out to the farthest reaches of the yet unknown universe. How would that change the way that we live out the logos of our lives? When I talk to the kids, I often use I wonder questions. And if you're a Montessori kid, you'll recognize that technique. There are no right or wrong answers, just an opening to wonder and awe. In preparing for this 5-week rotation based on Brian McLaren's first few chapters, I did quite a lot of research on patterns in the universe. And I challenge you to go home and Google this very topic. I spent hours clicking on links, and what I found was astounding. Today, the 1st through 3rd graders are learning patterns in music with Liesel. The 4th grade is learning about the patterns in creation stories. And the 5th graders are learning about the patterns of nature and the universe. So here are my I wonder questions and thoughts for you based on what I discovered and what the kids are learning about today. So throughout the universe, there's a mathematical ratio that can be found throughout creation. a sequence of numbers known as the Fibonacci sequence, found in spirals and other geometric designs referred to as the golden ratio. From the strands of our DNA to our fingerprints, trillions of uniquely identifiable signatures, to the galaxies, this sequence can be found. Within otherwise totally unrelated things, the same sequence or pattern repeats over and over. The inner ear, seashells, pine cones, pineapples, the way flower petals grow, honeycombs, ocean waves, the octave, the foundation of all music, the movement of our solar system through space, on and on and on and on, the pattern repeats over and over and over. Is it possible, I wonder, that God has a signature? Is it possible that this sequence is God saying, I am here. I'm above you and below you. I surround you, I'm within you. Wherever you look, I am there. Wherever beauty moves you, I am there. I am there and I am here now and forevermore. I challenge you, as I do with the kids, to wonder with me. It might change the way you see the Logos and how the path that you walk fits into the Logos of God forever. Now, I can't speak for Marty or Jason or Heather, but often when I'm in deep conversation with another person or when I prepare to preach, I hear what I'm saying or writing and realize that I'm saying what I need to hear. It's humbling, but perhaps also another piece of the pattern, God speaking to us through our own words. So when I wrote the following, I had to stop and practice what I was about to preach. I've had a pretty interesting and difficult year this year. My mother-in-law passed away. My son-in-law passed away from brain cancer. And I have just been diagnosed with lymphoma. And so my life, the fabric of my life, has been pulled a little out of shape this year. And so when we find that happening to us, when we lose sight, perhaps, of who we are, perhaps, and this is what I did, we can look at the tips of our fingers and see God's signature stamped upon us. Put our fingers to our hearts and understand that we are God's beloved. We are loved beyond understanding, uniquely created to be who we are. And we can know that though the fabric of our lives is snagged or torn, by turning toward love again and again, we can find wholeness and our place in the Logos once again. We can find, indeed, a world of meaning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, and all things came into being through him. And without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. Will you pray with me? Oh God, Creator, Logos, Weaver of all that is and ever shall be, just as the psalmist did generations ago, we sing your praises and wonder at the magnificence of creation. Open the eyes of our heart, Lord, that we might see your pattern in all things and within ourselves, that we might boldly walk with you on your path of love. Amen.